Welcome, everybody. It's so great to be here with you. We are doing a special edition episode today with evolutionary astrologer Ari Wolfe. And am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Ari? Yeah. Okay. Then I was getting mixed up with Jeffrey Wolfe. You guys both have the Wolf thing going on. Nice. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating the 2020 energies and transits with love. And I love that you have this orientation towards love, Ari, because one of the things that I'm seeing with this year is that it is a huge invitation and a huge challenge for all of us to really stay in that energy as all this chaos and intensity is happening all around us. So I'm really excited to be talking about this with you. And I've been hearing about your work for years. Natasha Alter, who is the woman who I had my first astrology reading with, who now has become an integral part in my life and also in like the creation of Astrology Hub. She has spoken so highly about you for years and years. So it's amazing to finally be here with you. This is your Astrology Hub debut, and I'm honored to be introducing you to our audience. And so what I would love to do is just give you a chance to tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be a practicing evolutionary astrologer today.
All right. So the journey is I started off actually in high school. I went to yeshiva, Jewish Orthodox school, and was very interested, very drawn to the more mystical aspects of the Talmud. And I remember this one day when astrology was mentioned, there was this teaching that basically said, Ein Mazal Yisrael, which basically means astrology doesn't apply to the Jewish people. And that's like a Talmudic teaching. Putting that perspective aside, which it doesn't resonate with me, it implied that astrology was valid. Hearing that from my religion, from my teachers, said this means that my rabbis recognized 2,000 years ago that there's validity to astrology. So as a South Node in Sag, Sun in Sag, Jupiter in Sag, individual, Mercury in Sag, the seeker element in me was deeply excited. So I remember that as a turning point where I was like, I got to find out what this is. Like, if that's real, who am I? What does it mean? What is it all about? And that drive to know the truth and to understand really what's this life about and who am I? How can I live this life in the best way possible? Really brought me into the path of studying astrology. And around 2005, I felt pretty disillusioned because I couldn't really connect with a deeper soulful perspective on astrology. And it wasn't, I knew it was real, but I couldn't find something that really met my inner knowing that this life is a very short moment. And I wasn't really grasping the question, like, why is this my chart? Why is this my body? What's the purpose, So long story short is, I think Jupiter was transiting my Saturn. Yeah, Jupiter was transiting my Saturn. And my friend introduced me to Adam Gainsbourg's work and Jeffrey Wolf Green's work. And it was like an immediate knowing that this was a path, a part of my path to walk. And it's sort of like a Plutonian experience. We have these encounters and we have to give ourselves to these experiences because there's an evolutionary journey and we have to walk it to completion. We have to marry it. We have to osmose it to see what there is to teach us. But then we also have to let everything go in the end too. So I worked with Adam Gainsbourg very closely from 2005 through the end of 2007, I think, or 2008. I don't remember. But I was certified with him. And that, after that, I kind of went more fully into the Jeffrey Wolf Green EA world. And in 2011, I was empowered to begin teaching. I wrote my EA beginners book then, and began doing a lot of beginners classes and beginners courses for students. What's happened for me over the years, though, is, as per all things, it's like the technique and the practice is really beautiful and really important and really relevant. And as my soul journey unfolds, I've actually found it really important to stay focused on the truth, not a construct, not a paradigm, not an ism. And so I call my work heart and soul centered astrology. And it just, those are the words that feel most essentialized to how I carry this work. It is soul centered, and I carry the evolutionary astrology lineage, but it's not necessarily like pure EA in terms of every technique and perspective. And I feel my work is really shaped by my own devotion to live as love, and just the ongoing realizations of what this life really is about, and who I really am, who we really are. And so for me, astrology has been and continues to be just a vehicle and a path through which I can communicate and teach and share whatever is helpful and relevant for people on their own awakening journey, on their own realization. And, music and just listening, I say this a lot, that we can have a chart and do so much good left brain work. And I kind of feel like as I've gotten older, my left brain has just sort of gotten more, you'll know what you need to know in the moment kind of thing. And I used to judge that. I used to feel like, oh, if I don't have all these astrological skills and techniques, then I'm, not a sufficient. It's a tendency for evolutionary astrologers to be very, very single focus on their evolutionary astrology Pluto world, but not necessarily know much about things that maybe a lot of other astrologers know. And I've always felt, I don't do astrocartography. I mean, I could, but it's not. There are all these things that I just never felt interest in, that never called me. And I've come to learn something really important, that all knowledge, all techniques, all practices, they're empty in their essence. They have no inherent value or meaning. And it's really up for us to learn how to use everything as a purpose for love, as a purpose for healing and for returning. And so I'm grateful for the knowledge that I have, and the realizations that are ever unfolding. And using astrology is just a way of sharing whatever knowledge I might have, whatever insight I carry, as a way to be in service. And so that's very sobering. There was a moment in my life in my early 20s when I felt deeply disillusioned by the realization that I was never going to learn it. I was never going to understand all of astrology. At that moment in my life, there was just a sense of, why even bother? Why even study? Why even start? And I think there's been a really powerful healing, and I encourage this for everyone in anything that we do. It's, I have a Virgo rising, so this is that speaking. We're never going to reach perfection. We're never going to come to an all-encompassing anything but to do it the best we can, and to know why we're doing it. So that's my little introduction to this work and where I'm at with it.
I love it. It's so great. It's so wonderful to hear about your journey and that process. We were actually on a live Q&A for Cameron Allen's Health Secrets of the Zodiac class that we just did. We just completed with him. And one of the things he was talking about is how we tend to overthink. And when we overthink, we're missing cues from the body. We're not paying attention to what's actually happening, because we're trying to fit it into, like you said, trying to fit it into a construct or an idea. And so much of his guidance was intuitive. And at one point I said, not everybody knows how to do that. Like, not everybody knows how to move through life listening and following cues. And there's a process of getting there, which it sounds like you've gotten there, which is actually not a destination, because it's always changing too. But there's what I've noticed in the astrology students is there's the period of time where you're learning the technique and you're needing that foundation. And then once you've had that experience, then you can start moving with it and making it your own, just like you would learning a dance or song. If you're a musician, it's the same way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a Jupiter principle, that the truth is always in the present. It's like the truth is here. And so if I'm working with someone, what wants to be revealed, what the purpose, we don't designate purpose. We don't decide what the purpose of anything is. We might think we know, but that's in spirit's hands. And so the purpose of something is in the something, right? So to be able to sense that intuitively is very much a Jupiter experience of being on the journey and not having too many preconceived ideas ahead of time about what it's supposed to look like, what this whole thing is supposed to be like. So I feel for me, a big part of it is just entering into the space where there's my Siri just went up.
1 moment. That's awesome.
Okay, I don't know what to say. Entering into the space. That's funny. She keeps on coming on. That's never happened
She's
before.
having trouble, she said.
Yeah. See, the left brain really can't go there. Siri can't operate in that way. She doesn't understand holistic perspective, letting go and letting spirit. And so just being in the field of the moment and in prayer. When I do a session, I call my work intuitive guidance work. I don't even have the word astrology in it. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. I don't know. Well, I don't think of it as astrology because I'm using the chart, and the chart provides information and perspective. But when I'm with the person, it's the connection with their soul field in the moment that really reveals what wants to happen. And the chart is so deep. I mean, you don't have to be so skilled to go so deep in the chart. You just learn a few little things and you can unpack it infinitely so. And the truth has infinite layers to it. But what we can access, what we actually want to bring forward in the moment, is revealed by whatever the intentions for healing are, whatever is needing to happen. That's where I feel a lot of replenishment and joy in my sessions, because more and more it feels like I can relax and not be in such a doer state where I think I need to provide. When I first began doing this work, when I first began doing readings, which I think was around 2006, 2007, and I was just, studying and getting all the technical, now like Mercury is knowledge, information, what we're interested in. It's in the 3rd house in Gemini. And what do you do if it's, I would work through all the details in my mind and then to synthesize it somehow into the intuitive right brain understanding. It was exhausting. And I would spend 3 hours with a person, and just kind of going deep into every little thing. And I find that the opportunity to interact with other people in the soul field, where I also know it's one with my journey, that your healing and my healing are the same, and there's no possibility that I can be with someone and that we're not sharing it together. So it teaches me so much about empathy, and to know that whatever I say, it has to actually come from direct knowledge. And that can only happen if I'm authentic and I'm willing to look inside. So it's relaxing and it's curious and it's interesting. I don't know where it's going to go. And that's how I feel it should be, for me at least. So that when I'm working with someone, I really have the experience that I'm on the journey, I'm on the path. I'm not just playing a role. That doesn't feel authentic to me.
Ari, there's a lot of trust involved in what you're saying. There's also a lot of understanding of the value of that. I think a lot of people feel like, well, in order for it to have value, it needs to be, it needs to be astrology. It needs to be,
Right.
by the books. It needs to be technical. I need to be revealing something that, that they've never seen before about themselves. And there's an overvaluing of that left brain technical thing, which our entire culture does, right? What no matter what the subject is, and an undervaluing of that more intuitive, in the moment, sensing, feeling, knowing what is needed at any given moment.
Yeah.
And it's that I love seeing that, because it shows you're giving other people permission to really sink into that. So many people could be practicing astrology right now, but they're waiting until they have enough information, and it's like, but actually, if you have the information and you have your intuition and you're trusting that, you're probably ready to start giving people some guidance, and your guidance could be really, really valuable for people who are ready, especially like you said, when you set that intention and that field going into the reading for the highest and best, for whatever healing needs to happen. There's so much magic in that alone. So much magic. And you don't have to do as much. We think we have to do so much to be of value and to be of service. It's like, really setting the space and being there to hold it is a lot, and allows spirit, like you said, allows spirit to come in and fill it in for us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so sensitive to where I'm setting up too much of a shop, where I'm setting up camp in something that's very fixed, an identity construct that I'm certain of.
Right.
I don't really feel like my life's purpose is to be an astrologer and to do a certain kind of work. For me, it feels more true to just be in an ongoing process with it, because I want to grow. I want to actually know the truth, and I want to live it. And I also acknowledge that the chart, the information in the chart is here. It's in the soul. Like if I'm working with someone and they're right here, if I'm focusing all of my attention on a two-dimensional representation of a very profound, multi-layered, multiple lives, like timeless snapshot of a soul reality, it's like, let us not forget how special and holy this is, and to commune with anyone and to honor that the meeting is destined. Everyone we come into contact with in every instance is exactly who we're meant to be with. So it's just, I really pray to continue to cultivate just more curiosity. And it's like an interesting balance between knowing my purpose, doing my work. And I'm, really in this moment right now where I'm really being called to make myself more available, teaching more, but in a way where it's also not fixed in the ways that I used to teach, right? A preset structure, or, teaching within someone else's construct. It's actually creating it with my flavor that reflects the realizations that are alive for me. And that's our biggest contribution, is teaching from that authentic place. And it's like that's why this talk is about love, because to me, love is the only thing that's of value, of meaning. And if I can teach an astrology course, do a session, write a book, and everything is about pointing people back to who they are, and it gives more permission, helps us with forgiveness, helps us release all the stuff that we're carrying, that's what's most important. Because when we die, we're going to drop all the knowledge we have, the astrology, as well as all of the credentials and everything that we thought was important or made us important. None of that matters in the end.
Wow. Okay. Ari, let's talk about 2020. So how are you seeing what's happening from kind of like that meta level? What do you see happening right now astrologically, and how it's playing out for us collectively and individually? What's happening? Okay. What's your perspective?
So I'll speak at it from two perspectives. There's the Mars retro in Aries squaring all the Capricorn, all of which kind of gearing to move into the fixed axis. Mars in Taurus meeting Uranus. Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, squaring that Mars at first and then Uranus. To me, this is a time where there is a potent destabilization and redirection of our life force energies. When we deal with the Mars, Aries, Capricorn energies, we are very much concerning ourselves with choice and direction. Right? We all have to take responsibility in our lives to know what we're building, know what we're creating, maybe not having control over anything pretty much, but we do have control over what we're cultivating, what we're conditioning, our actions, our choices, and what we're intending, what we're aiming for in our actions and choices. So I think this is very much a time where it's a window where we get to work on our minds, work on our behaviors. At this time, with all this Mars energy activated, there can be a lot of fear. Mars corresponds to fear. And the fear is always going to correspond to a perception of the world being hostile in some way. That we're going to be attacked. I won't have what I need. I'm not safe. I won't be supported. I don't know what's going to happen. And so we react in that fear, and the dynamic with Capricorn can either be a depression, I don't feel power or the ability to make the necessary choices in my life, or a defensive, reactive place, a defended place, because we actually feel very unsafe. So I think a lot of the potential growth in this time is being able to really know ourselves, take responsibility for our own spiritual growth, for our own spiritual maturation, and work on a mindset that recognizes life is actually supporting us in a healthy way to grow and to become strong, to become more sovereign in ourselves, to cultivate more agency in our being. But this means all the places where we are maybe perceiving roadblocks and fear and opposition and adversity, it's really all an invitation to connect with where we're holding that within ourselves. And one of the deep teachings of Saturn in general, and this is emphasized with Pluto in the mix, there's a tendency on the journey of maturing into our own being, to our own sovereign being, to deflect self-responsibility. At first it's, parents. And then, maybe society or those who are, making the rules, or our boss. But actually very few people ever get to a point fully where they are really curious and interested in taking full responsibility for the totality of their own life experience. And that should be spoken and used in a wise way. And so what I mean by that is I am responsible for how I feel in life, for my state of mind. The outer world is not the determinant of my peace, nor is it the determinant of my distress. And so if I want to cultivate a way of being, a way of living that feels solid and strong and purposeful and aligned, these are all Saturn words, I need to notice the very places where I don't feel safe and secure and aligned. Saturn takes time. So Mars is like all this energy pushing up against all this Capricorn Saturnian kind of energy, which can be very old conditioned beliefs and behaviors and ways of thinking. Of course, it resonates with patriarchy, the ways that we've been living in relation to one another, to the earth, to our bodies. And of course, Jupiter has so much to do with race and culture. Capricorn has everything to do with gender dynamics and social constructs. And Pluto is evolution. And so the first thing that I'll just, put out with this is it's natural at this time to not feel 100% comfortable or clear, because there's a lot of triggers, a lot of energy, a lot of movement, and it can feel volatile. But to have enough wisdom to understand that there is purpose and growth that is intended here will allow us to have more patience and maturity and grace. So to me and for me, the practice is, if I know that there's nothing to, even if I have fear, but I remind myself, like the parent to the child, it's okay, you're loved and you're safe. These are all lessons for you in remembering who you are. It invites a gesture of grace and gentleness. I think the biggest sign of being empowered, the biggest sign of feeling secure in our own self, is a non-defended stance, because it says we trust life. And so if there are challenges or oppositions arising, to hold it in grace and to hold it in curiosity. Where is this leading? Okay, I feel uncomfortable. Where is this leading? What's the invitation in all of this? The second piece that I would offer is truly, if the train is going quickly, you have to run fast to catch the train. And so in many ways, we are being called to trust ourselves more. And where we don't feel we have the power or that we can make choices, it might just be reflecting where we're holding on to a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of unworthiness. I'm not allowed to. Saturn, Capricorn, I'm not allowed to. Mars, you got to go, but I'm not allowed to. I can't, I shouldn't. I'm not worthy. I'm a bad person, or people will judge me. People will misunderstand me. We can have a lot, and this can be internalized, or it can be projected outwards in more of an angry, like, no one's letting me. Or it can be like, I'm not worth it. These are just two expressions of holding that vibe of not yet coming into that Capricornian, I can trust myself. And actually, it's creator's will. It's a natural flow of life for us to come into a sense of self-trust in what we're doing. And that self-trust in what we're doing doesn't mean we know anything else. In fact, I have one spiritual teacher, David Hoffmeister, that once said to me something so beautiful. He said, the only thing we will ever really, when we wake up, the only thing that we'll ever actually know is your creator. Nothing else will make sense to you. And he also said that, true understanding comes from peace. Those two teachings have been so meaningful for me, because it's an invitation to trust that in the truth, in love, in source, there's total confidence. And knowing where I am right now, knowing what I'm doing right now, knowing my part. We all have a part. We have to play out. Yeah, Mars says you gotta go. I think of Mars very much as a self-cleaning oven. You have to act. That action sets in motion a chain of responses from the environment and leads us down our path. And it eventually becomes a path of undoing the doing. It's all about an exhaustion of the need to do something, because it's just, that's the journey. We're exhausting our investments in there being something out there to find. But we can't just transcend that. The joy of this path is walking our path and doing what you got to do, bringing more love, more care, more agency into our walk. So I think for a lot of us, this actually is a time to have confidence in ourselves. And the extent to which we look inside and are willing to connect with maybe the disempowered aspects and say, okay, I see you. It's time to believe in you. It's time to stand up. It's time to start. This heals where we might feel blocked or triggered or victimized at this time. It's really about trusting who we are and why we're here, not needing to know anything other than what's the next step.
Big things for all of us. And the energy is so supportive of that entire exploration for us right now. It's never been more relevant. It's never been more essential. I mean, it feels like, and it's never been so like almost this feeling of like now or never, like now, like
Yeah,
this,
absolutely.
like step into this, really lean into this. I have a brother who has tinnitus, and it just came on like 2 months ago. So the ringing in the ear, just ringing in his ear, and he couldn't sleep at night, and just so much anxiety and so much stress. His business is definitely the kind of business that probably won't last through this whole economic thing. And so there's a lot of pressure and stress. And so he developed this tinnitus thing. And what it's forcing him to do is what, like you said, gain control of his mind, step into, like, cultivate peace. And for him, it's like a survival thing at this point, because when it's ringing, he literally feels like he's going crazy. Like he can't focus. He can't sleep. And I said, how amazing for you to have a ringing in your ear that's not letting you go back to sleep. Like, think about that metaphorically. You are not allowed to go back to sleep until you step up and meet these aspects of yourself that have been there the whole time. You just didn't give them any attention. But now it's like, hey, time's up, bell's ringing, come on, pay attention.
Love that metaphor. It's so true. I mean, so many spiritual teachers say that spiritual awakening has to feel like an emergency.
Yes.
It has to feel like it's like life or death. You have to run towards it. There has to feel, and to be able to experience that on whatever level, if we're not engaging in our own empowerment and knowing ourselves and getting in alignment with these energies, what's unfolding right now, it just destroys us.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. This word safe. Can we talk about it for a little bit?
Yeah, I love it.
I've never heard it so many times in my life. And I remember in 2019, I think it was Tammy Brunk, but I'm not totally positive. But she was talking about how we're in 2020, we would need to reorient around the word safe. What does it actually mean to be and feel safe? And where can we actually find our safety from? And where are we trying to find safety from that isn't ever going to give us that feeling of safety? So, I mean, it's right now what people keep saying, stay safe, be safe. Am I safe? Do you make me feel safe? Am I unsafe around you? There's all this
Wow.
safe thing, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
There's
The
yeah,
concept.
I love it. There's a teaching in A Course in Miracles, which me and my partner are practicing right now, um, that says, "My safety is in my defenselessness. In my defenselessness, my safety lies." Practicing that has been really profound for me. There is a tendency in our maturing process to not yet understand where true safety is. So safety is outside of ourselves. Someone else has to create it for us. We need a condition. And I feel the spiritual journey and the practice is the ongoing realization of where safety actually is. It's not in a condition. And if it was in a condition, there's always going to be a certain vulnerability to the outer reality. And to the extent that we're all able to in this moment to understand the depth, the breadth of this truth, means there's an invitation. And we don't have to look for lessons. So wherever we feel unsafe, this is the opportunity. This is where, if we are choosing to look at that really closely, something that I'm finding is my feeling of unsafety follows my thinking. Right? When I begin to act and treat others and relate in the world in a way that perceives distrust, attack, hurt, I'm carrying that, right? If I'm needing another person to treat me a certain way for me to love them, I'm creating such a conditional reality for myself. There's no peace in that. And the funny thing is, it looks very reasonable. This is what most of us do, right? It's like, I'm not going to be innocent in my perception of one another and love others, love everyone the same, treat everyone with respect and care. I'm gonna change the way I act towards certain people depending on how they treat me. It seems very reasonable. But we actually don't really live so joyfully that way. There might be this sense of, yeah, I'm taking care of myself. I have good boundaries. But this isn't about having poor boundaries. Love has nothing to do with having poor boundaries. So that's a piece that I'm learning about safety. And we can give our attention to all the things that are happening in the world. And theoretically, there's any number of things to worry about. And there are any number of things to fight for. And maybe it's a part of a person's path to be fighting for certain things and addressing certain things, injustices, environmental dynamics. Like, everyone has their own path and we got to walk it. But where fear is a part of the picture is not necessary, apparently. So yeah, I love thinking about that. A big prayer on my own journey is, looking for where is that deep feeling of restfulness. Restfulness, I think, comes with safety. When you're feeling really restful, Cancer energy. Cancer. I have a lot of fourth house planets, a lot of Sag in the fourth. So, restfulness, safety. You can I'm holding my 8-month-old daughter, and I can tell she's safe. She feels safe without a concept of safe. She can just completely rest. And I think a lot about that because it's a part of my own yearning and sort of inquiry. Where does that restfulness come from? I was actually telling my partner, I think this morning or yesterday, that I'm realizing if my conscience is clear, if I'm at peace with my actions and how I'm thinking, how I'm relating, then I can rest. But if I'm holding secrets, if my inner reality is different than my outer reality, if I'm holding private thoughts and I'm creating this world of separation on the inside but acting differently on the outside, it might look very functional because that's what we all do, but we actually can't rest. Our minds can't really settle into a deeply peaceful place of just living in this present moment. Children reflect that. Their natural inclination is trust, is restfulness. Yeah, so those are some thoughts on that. I'd love to hear anything you want to share about that. I love thinking of safety as an idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would, if you could further maybe even give an example of what defenselessness would look like? Like
I can give
how
many.
yeah, I'd love to hear, because it's a word and it's like I can feel what you mean, but I'd love to
uh,
see it story wise. What would it
sure.
look
Well, in a personal relationship, it can be one person is accusing the other person of all kinds of things. You know, you think this about me. You did this. You hurt me. You said this wrong. Or when you did this, I'd hurt, and that you don't care about me, or, whatever it might be. We do this to each other. We accuse one another. Even if we're like being polite in our language, we all know what it's like to be the recipient of someone having a less than loving perspective of us in the moment. It's very easy to defend oneself in that moment. It's like, what do you mean? That's not what I did, or that's not what I said, or that's not what I was intending, or that's not what I was thinking, or no, this is your stuff you're putting on me. It's easy to feel really hurt and defended in those moments. And really what's going on whenever we perceive attack, I'm intentional about saying perceiving attack. There's so much hurt because it's a violation of the love and the trust that is actually essential to who we are. But it's the perception of attack that we need to take responsibility for, because either we're giving our attention towards separation or we're giving our attention towards love. If our attention's towards love, we will hear the heart of another person. We will love them. We will care about them. We will know, oh, this person really deserves to be heard right now. Let me just listen. Let me see let me just let them express it, And it doesn't mean not speaking for yourself, but if we're speaking and responding from a perception of being attacked, if we're defending something, basically what we defend is what we think is important. It's what we think our life is for. And if it also tells us where we're directing our energy. It's like it's what consumes our consciousness. Just imagine this archetype of, a a very famous actor, well known, lots of movies, like everyone loves Tom Hanks, right? Tom Hanks, good example. Who I don't know anyone who doesn't like Tom Hanks. He's like the safest guy in the world as far as I'm aware. Is lots of cancer. He plays all these really sweet roles in the movies. Okay, imagine someone says something negative about Tom Hanks to his face, like, "Oh, you really sucked in that movie." And I don't know what his response would be, but just to imagine the absurdity of him taking that personally. Right? Imagine the absurdity of anyone that's really actualized in their purpose. A royal king, queen that knows who they are. It's like, imagine insulting Jesus. And, in how can we expect anyone that is awake, that knows who they really are, to feel attacked, right? To feel attacked means we're perceiving an attacker. Would love perceive an attacker? Right? It's incomprehensible, actually. And so that's a reference for this idea of my safety is in my defenselessness. So then to notice where defensiveness comes up and to become curious about that. And a part of what I'm learning, in relationship and in life is to really take responsibility for all of my perceptions, because none of my perceptions are objectively true. None of them are. Any perception that's not of love, that's not of unity, basically sets up camp in a false idea that there's your reality and there's my reality. And I can do something to love you or hurt you, right? It's like I can either serve you or hurt you. It's like these ideas of we can either give us something or take something. And so I'm very mindful of where I might gravitate towards these false perceptions. It's almost like another example of a child is, saying mean things to us. And children do this. Children will, if they are feeling hurt, and they do not yet know how to be in relationship to their emotions, if they don't know that they're safe, their conditioned reaction might be blame, might be attack. But if the parent sees the child as attacking and relates to them as that, there's no healing. There has to be a compassion and an awareness of, oh, okay, what are you really trying to say here? It's interesting because there's no way to really understand this without compassion. And there's no way to have compassion if we don't feel a lot of love for ourselves. You know, we have to be able to love ourselves and feel what we're feeling, to feel hurt, to feel defensive, to feel misunderstood, to feel attacked, to feel betrayed, I mean, all the things that we feel in relationship to one another and to life and to society and to culture. We need to be able to feel that and to feel our tenderness, to really have compassion for how tender our hearts are, you know, and to just honor, like, oh, this is so tender. And I think that's the entry point to really see the tenderness of another being, you know, and it's revealed that we're all just calling for love, wanting to remember and trying our best and forgetting sometimes. But if we can call each other home with gentleness, and this should never feel like sacrifice. You know, love should never feel like we're martyring ourselves or being strong for another person or taking abuse, or that's a misunderstanding. There's a place for boundaries and no's, but none of that necessarily means we're you know, in this perception of attack and hurt and defensiveness. Those are two different things. And when we start to feel exhausted and depleted, even in a session, right? It's like it's all about agenda, a doership. There's something that I got to do to fix something that needs to happen that isn't done yet. That's exhausting. It depletes us.
Beautiful, Ari. I mean, that what you just, okay, a couple things. The safety and defenselessness. At first, that's like a mind puzzle. It's like, wait, I don't understand. But as you were speaking, it's like, well, exactly, because the defenselessness is the acknowledgement that we are one and the same. So what is there to be protecting myself from, except for myself?
Exactly.
In that moment, right?
My own fear of myself.
Right, exactly. And then the other thing you just said about the tender heart, I've had so many experiences with that lately, as there's this call, you use these other words, innocent perception. I feel as we're creating something new here, as old structures and systems are crumbling, there's this call to start dreaming and visioning in a new way to do things. And in order to do that in a way that doesn't recreate the very things that we all know aren't working, it would be very helpful for all of us to do that from a place of innocent perception, of newness, of what's possible, of, you know, limitlessness, truly. And to do that, though, requires us to tune into that tender heart that is vulnerable. But when we do that for ourselves, we are able to look at another person and be like, oh, wow, you're so tender right now. Like, it's not that you want to attack. It's that you're feeling tender and your heart is feeling hurt. And so I can just feel everything you're saying. It's so true and so relevant for right now, as we are in a place that can feel very vulnerable. It can feel very raw. It can feel very overwhelming and, yes, threatening for a lot of the time. And so all these different things you've brought up today offer so much perspective for working with these energies in a way that feels very productive. I'll use a Capricorn word. I'd love to know, because one of the other words you used was joy. As you were speaking, I was like culling all these qualities that we're being invited to really embody this year. And one of the words you used was joy. Astrologically, what does joy associate with?
Oh, interesting. Three possibilities come to mind. There's a Capricornian joy. You know, like we take to the grave whatever we're holding on to. So like the guilt, the repression, the shame, the judgment, all that, right? But when we clear that, and the clearing of that is Capricorn, right? Taking responsibility for ourselves, we set up a foundation of this life where we can rest and not always be in this root chakra concern with survival and defense and protection. So I think Capricorn sets a foundation for peace. And there can be a joy in that. I can see joy resonating with, all right, I feel in integrity with my life. Otherwise, I would really associate true joy with Pisces. Because, joy being the joy of knowing our source, knowing our creator, knowing love. And there is joy, like to know who we are, to know the truth of every interaction, the purpose of every interaction, the purpose of this life as only being the unraveling of love, and to know that purpose and to be arriving in that unraveling. I think there's inherent joy in that. If it's a joy that doesn't have a condition, right? It's a joy, it's a quality of arriving at what is inherently true. That's very Pisces. And then there's like the joy of Jupiter, Sag, which is sort of like an optimism of the journey. Yay, we get to do this. I have a positive perspective on this whole thing, and it's hard at times, but Jupiter and Capricorn, they go, hey, this is hard work, but keep on going up the mountain. You're doing great. Just remember, there's more. So don't get too depressed. But it's okay if you're depressed. Acknowledge that, love it, be there, but keep on going. You're doing so great. You're doing a great job. It's like that optimism that we need with Jupiter. And it basically holds this perspective of there's a journey here. It keeps on going. It keeps on unraveling. There's so much more to unravel and see. There's optimism and joy in optimism.
Okay, so Capricorn, Pisces, and Jupiter.
Off the cuff, yeah.
Yeah. And the Capricorn, when you think of the goat, I mean, I live right next door to a bunch of goats. They are very playful. They actually, especially the baby goats, they are very joyful. They're just exuberant. And so, I can definitely see that just in terms of that archetype of the goat too. It's playful. It's having fun. It's frolicking
we joke
around.
That my daughter, actually, she's a Capricorn. She sounds like a goat.
Uh-huh.
And she's so joyful.
I'm a Capricorn too. Capricorn
cool.
sun, Venus, and Mercury.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay. This has been so amazing. I would love to leave with like one more question about the remainder of 2020. If for those listening, maybe they're in challenging positions in their life, maybe they're finding themselves in the best time of their life. I know there's a lot of different experiences of what's happening. What would you say would be the most important thing for us to keep in mind as we go into this fall and last part of 2020?
We know all of these planets are culminating in the beginning of 2021 with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, Uranus, Mars, and Taurus. And to me, that really reflects a significant turning point where it's like, okay, time to get together, new ways. It's like a grounding period. But that grounding comes because the slate is more clear, to think more clearly, to see new possibilities, new ways of living, new ways of Michelle actually called it thrivalism as opposed to survivalism. Thriving, Michelle, my partner, thriving together. But to be able to thrive means a certain state of receptivity and trust of life. So, in September and October, when all these planets begin going direct, I think there's a lot of clarity and forward movement. The biggest piece of advice that I would offer really for the remainder of this time, two pieces. One, trust that there's a destiny here. There's a path unfolding. We're walking the path to our soul purpose. And because we're so conditioned, we don't often understand what that is. We only have a past as a reference point. So our future is just the past. We don't really see it clearly. So to appreciate that this is all leading us towards peace, towards embodiment on a new level, towards a really much more integrated way of being and thriving on this planet. And two, based on that, stay in touch with purpose, the energy of purpose and constructive action. This is one of the most important times that I've ever seen where it's like tangible. There are things to do, decisions to make, taking responsibility for where we can be consciously creating and engaging in this life. The more that we feel that we're working with the energies, the more I think we can feel empowered and confident in ourselves. I think just self-confidence is really important right now. I'm sure there's more. That's what comes to me in this moment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun to be here with you. I could spend hours and hours with you. I already know that. If people want to find out more about your work, where can they go?
My website, arimoshe.com. I want to share that I have a couple new things that I'm doing that I'm excited about. So every week I meet with a small group of students. It's an open community forum where they ask questions. We look at charts. We sometimes will have some charts ahead of time that we'll plan. And it's basically anyone that's already somewhat practiced. They're already knowledgeable with the basics. And it's an opportunity to practice together and to study and go deep in any topic.
Nice.
So that's a new service every week. And I'm beginning to teach topical classes. So you can check it all out on my website. I do soul-to-soul companionship work, working with individuals over longer periods of time, sort of deepening on our deeper themes of soul work and just offering guidance and companionship along the journey. My website is Ari Moshe, ARIMOSHE.com. And stay tuned for a training program that I'll be launching in 2021.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. It's such a
pleasure
to officially meet you. I told you in the beginning, I feel like I already know you. Just
I recognize you.
Yeah, I just recognize you. You know how that happens?
Yeah.
So it's been great to have you here today. For those of you who are interested in getting updates on all the special edition and regular scheduled broadcasts that we do each week, you can go to astrologyhub.com and sign up to get the weekly digest. And that way you'll get a summary of all the different talks that I did in a week, and you'll get to stay in tune with all the content that we're putting out. And we're going to be doing a series of interviews with some new faces over the next few weeks. And normally those will be happening on Wednesdays and Fridays. So stay tuned. And if you don't have your Facebook, if you're watching this on Facebook, and if you don't have your settings set up so that you get alerts when we go live, you might want to consider doing that. I have no idea how to do it, but I know it's possible. And a lot of times we put it in the description of the talks, so you can get kind of like a little step-by-step of how to do that. All right, you're awesome. Thank you so much for doing your work and for being here in service to all of us, and for being one of the amazing translators of the language of light of astrology. I am so grateful. And just thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right. And thanks to all of you for being here and for being a part of our community. And as always, for making astrology a part of your life. I'll catch you on the next episode.